Hello and welcome to Remote Work and the National Security Mission. Before we begin our program, I'd like to share a video from one of today's sponsors.
National security depends on staying ahead of the threat. Booz Allen's intelligence experts and innovators push the technical edge for today's mission and tomorrow's challenges. So together, we can combat adversaries, identify risks, analyze information, and apply emerging technologies for next-generation capabilities. When national security depends on you, we're here to propel your mission forward.
Please welcome Executive Vice President John Doyen.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. We have a terrific lineup of speakers ready to discuss the future of remote work, the challenges, opportunities, and importantly, the key lessons learned from the pandemic. And we certainly have learned a lot as a community this past year. A recent survey of military and Department of Defense employees found that 88% of those who were able to telework due to COVID said that they were as productive, if not more productive, working remotely as when they commuted to traditional work sites. This according to a report issued by the DoD Inspector General. And so while this past year may have shown that work can continue in a remote hybrid fashion, the question is, how do we sustain that and those advantages that were gained as we move forward? Our panelists today will examine how remote development is enabling new options for building better and faster capabilities, and how the flexibilities realized by remote work can be used to attract and retain a diverse and highly skilled workforce. So before we begin the discussion, let me make a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have questions, please submit them through the question box on the right side of your screen. We will do our best to get to your questions. Also, we're pleased to welcome members of the press to the call today. So this is a reminder that this program is on the record. In addition, we'll be posting the program recording on our website early next week. And finally, I would like to thank our sponsors, Booz Allen Hamilton, LMI, and SAIC for their critical support of this program. We could not deliver this kind of expert insight without the support of our partners. And now I'm pleased to welcome Shane Stahl, Vice President at Booz Allen Hamilton, who will introduce our panel moderator. Shane, over to you.
Thank you, John. On behalf of Booz Allen Hamilton, thank you to INSA for this event. Through the past year of disruptions, the pace of technology of our world continues to accelerate. Our nation as a whole and the intelligence community must be poised and ready with cutting-edge solutions to protect, and mitigate our national security. While much of the front lines of the intelligence community never left the SCIFs, other tasks were able to be segmented and distributed successfully through hybrid or distributed workplace options while sustaining security. Close collaboration with our clients, we continue to discover and design more secure remote delivery options, embracing innovative solutions to support the national security mission. The strength and uniqueness of our intelligence community is found in the innovation of our talent and collaborative efforts. We must continue to leverage that spirit to deliver the outcomes our nation needs inside and outside of secure spaces. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce our moderator. Gabe Alix is Vice President of Intelligence at Applied Insight and co-chair of INSA's Cyber Council Remote Telework Working Group. At Applied Insights, he is responsible for their IC South business, which encompasses CIA, BIA, DNI, to name a few. Previously, he served as CTO for Digital Age Experts. An accomplished cyber practitioner and cloud technologist, and generally nice person, Gabe has led our teams and built complex workloads across the IC for 20 plus years in securing and enabling a great variety of mission solutions and workloads. Please join me to welcome Gabe Alix. Sorry, Gabe.
No worries. With that introduction, I just thank you so much, and thank you everyone for attending this wonderful talk. We have an amazing collection of moderators and panelists that will be able to help you in covering and discussing this topic. We're joined by Alan Dean here from MGA's Unified Communications Group, and Wanda Jones-Heath from the Principal Cyber Advisor over at the Department of Air Force. We're joined by Mel Kepler, Lead Talent Development from LMI, and Shorin Shaw from Booz Allen Hamilton. So thank you so much, panelists, for taking time out of your days to join us. And I would love to jump into questions. But as we go into the first question, please give us a little bit about your background and your thoughts on remote work as we move forward. So let's get this started with the first question. The pandemic really resulted in many of us working from home, some for the first time. How did your organization respond to that challenge of working remotely from home? What were some of the obstacles faced and how did you address them? So we'll jump over to Alan if you want to get us started.
Good afternoon and thank you. It's a privilege to be here. NGA had quite a challenge because we do have an open source mission where a large portion of our workforce could do telework. So our biggest challenge was, now how do we take our unclassified network and send it to home when we only had approximately 10% on average in and out of the building, and now looking at a 90% workforce being outside. So we had to quickly pivot and build up our resources on that SBU network, as well as then go out and get the tools with our industry partners be able to provide that connectivity, which we used WebEx and some vBrick and some other tools to be able to do so.
Excellent. Mel, what are your thoughts on some of the challenges your organization faced?
Well, I'm facing, our organization is facing a slightly different set of challenges than a purely secure government organization like NGA. LMI does a lot of government consulting work, including in unclassified spaces and not outside the national security mission. So there were, we almost had a haves and have-not situation that our leadership had to deal with, where some people's lives went on almost as normal, where, you know, if you're working for Postal, you could go home and continue to connect to the same networks you'd always done. But if you worked for a national security client, you may have been completely out of work, completely disconnected from your client. We were lucky to have a great relationship with the clients that we worked with in the national security space that allowed our people to continue on their contracts and keep being paid and keep being employed all throughout the work from home environment, and then to slowly integrate back in as those clients of ours went back to work. And a lot of the rest of LMI that works non-secure, non-classified missions, you know, we moved over and made space for our neighbor. We said, hey, we've got some work for you over here with Postal or with the FAA, or come over and help us with this for a little while. We turned to internal training. We, like many of you did, we looked at what we could do in an unclassified environment to keep our people engaged, productive, and connected to LMI as a whole.
Wanda, similar question. What were some of the challenges you saw at the Air Force?
Hi, so thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel. Certainly tracking all of the other comments and agree. We all had to take a quick look and pivot. We were unable, you know, to really find that niche really quickly. Some of the obstacles, of course, were supply and demand of equipment. End user devices, you know, some were government furnished while others were personal devices, and so we had to ensure that that capability and access was available no matter where the airman was located. And we pivoted really quickly. We got our capability and access in place, and you know, just like other folks, we had to deal with the unclassified capability as well as our classified capability, because at the end of the day, we wanted to ensure that the mission was able to be accomplished.
Yeah, that's very, very telling in some of the challenges you face. What about Surin, from your perspective in your organization? How did you guys, how were you able to pivot and deal with some of the challenges?
Yeah, you know, first, thanks, Gabe, for hosting this panel today, and INSA for hosting the event. You know, for Booz Allen's leadership team, you know, we quickly convened in March, kind of when everything really hit its peak, and they defined 3 firm priorities early in the year, right? And it was protecting the health of our people, their families, their communities, supporting the critical needs of our government and commercial clients, and ensuring, Booz Allen's, institutional and financial resilience. Right. This was before the Section 3610 CARES Act was up. Right. Those were the priorities we set forward, and really they've held true throughout and to today. For our workforce that support the national security mission, right, even throughout the waves of disruption that went over the course of the year, we've been shoulder to shoulder with our clients this whole time, and really partnering with them to figure out how do we do elements of this mission in a remote capacity, right, where we can. Not everything can, right, and for those staff and for those members that support those missions, right, like, they are really continuing to push and help drive the outcomes there. But for, taking a new look at how we can redo parts of our business, right, and parts of, in partnership with the government, I think it's around some of the challenges we faced in the onset that we addressed early on, or, similar to what Mel and, Alan mentioned, right? It's around, how do we streamline communications? How do we ensure equitable engagement across the workforce, right? Because when you're not in the line of sight, it becomes really hard, right, to get that kind of exposure and experience and engagement. So, those are some of the things that we started and really focused on with early on, and then really throughout the course to today. And they're really kind of ingrained in how we're moving forward as an institution.
No, that's so going through the challenges all our organizations face through this. What does the panel think? Was remote work a viable way to sustain and increase the mission during the pandemic? And do you see it as something that you can continue to work to meet customer needs while providing some flexibility to your workforces? Let's start with you, Alan.
Thank you. Absolutely. So our director, Admiral Sharp, was absolutely enamored about how well we were able to pivot over to telework and what that work result was in the workforce. Like I said, of the big six inside the IC, NG is probably most postured to do an unclassified mission. So the difficult part was just pivoting to get over to that capability out to the workforce. So there was a lot of, almost every department inside of our technology, KC was challenged about how to get these going. But from the workforce, it has been a very, very positive attribute on NGA. As we go forward now, as we start to come out of the pandemic, we are still looking at a large telework force to go forward, certainly being expressed by our director. So it was a huge success for us.
Wanda, seeing that the Air Force is very distributed. Oh, Mel, did you want to say something?
I wanted to add on to Alan's point here of, I do think one of the interesting things from the pandemic that keeps running through my head is that quote from Steve Jobs that you don't innovate by coming up with a better product, you innovate by making the old way obsolete. And the pandemic really, the government and a lot of the government contractors, we've been dabbling in telework. We've been dipping our toe in. We've been thinking about it, working a little bit. Some people have been, and the pandemic really just made it like, nope, now it happens. Now's the time. We're all doing it. Let's go. And it's amazing what you can do when you have to, when you don't have a choice. And I want to commend NGA for really being able to do that. And I'm glad that Admiral Sharp is able to be proud of you, because it's something you really should be proud of. Sorry about that.
Oh no, please jump in as you guys have comments. We were attending a one customer brief, and there's like, you have to force us. You're going to have to force us to move because we know we need to do this. But sometimes change is slow. Change is slow for people in general, but for these organizations. So Wanda, how have you seen the pivot and change from already a distributed workforce that the Air Force is to moving into this world of remote work as well to enable the mission?
Mel's quote was very timely, because I was just getting ready to say that we're not going back. We have figured it out, that we can be successful in telework, just like the NGA approach. We proved it. The workforce has responded. As always, there are challenges, being transparent, But as we continue to mature, our capabilities with our new tools and new opportunities, we're finding that we're being very responsive. Understanding that our mission is a non-stop mission. We were able to go from 0 to 100 in relatively a short time, from changing our policy to getting new equipment to folks, to looking at cyber awareness activity to ensure that our people, as they are in their telework spaces, that they're still being secure. So from my viewpoint and being of course the CISO, we knocked this one out the box, and we're continuing to mature that capability, adding to what we have, and ensuring that our mission is always a go.
No, and thank you for being a security practitioner that's willing to look at the risk and find mitigations for it, as opposed to saying no. I think that's the future of a lot of cybersecurity, is how do we wrap around the right mitigations for the right value and risk to the mission. So pivoting a little bit, and we've been talking a little bit about technology and just the overall movement of from work to work from home. What about the cultural impact to your people? Some people may have absolutely loved that disconnected feel and able to, like, lack of commute, but maybe some others haven't. How have your different workforces managed the change from a team that's been 100% in a skiff for the last 10 years to maybe a young workforce that's used to being able to be out and disconnected a little bit more? Alan, did you want to jump in and give us your thoughts?
Sure, thanks. From NJ's perspective, I think it was very difficult in being disconnected in the beginning. How do teams now, try to individually work or collaborate at the desktop when their hands are kind of tied from their high side mission? As the pandemic kind of waned into the summertime, June, July, August, people have now really figured out kind of what the best tools are, how to do it. They've set their schedules, and they started moving forward. And then there was just a lot of development that came out in all different departments, amongst our analysts and our source and our research department. We're doing terrific work. And then as we got in to September and the kids not going to school, I think it still kind of waned on our workforce a bit. We did hear all the different issues. Our director had a town hall. I think we're on town hall number 64 now. So he held it every week. So he stayed very, very close in touch with all of the workforce and their thoughts, their feelings. So we kind of got a very broad brush of kind of how they felt. But now after we're kind of getting out of the pandemic, I would say in a lot of the departments and with the rush back to the building, I think people are excited to get back, see the team members, and continue with the mission. Although, like I said, there is still a large contingent that will utilize telework probably up to 64 hours within a pay period. So we're going to have the best of both worlds. Thanks.
Mel, since your scope in talent development and engagement, how have you found it enabling engagement for your people, and also developing those who may have a harder time understanding and working in a remote fashion?
I love this question. And I think the key here is that the quick turn response that we all had to make to the pandemic exposed every organization's culture. And it forced all of us, if we were going to work, if we were going to get things done and keep our organizations moving, to create a virtual engagement culture that was deliberate and explicit. We had to say out loud a lot of the hidden things that had been underneath, and we had to deliberately choose how we interact with each other. There's no more, doing a drive-by and sticking your head in your boss's office. You have to put something on their calendar. You have to be deliberate in how you connect with people. And my organization, LMI, did a lot of research on this, and our benchmarking showed us the huge benefits that come from a positive virtual culture. And a key part of that positive virtual culture is engagement. So actually, I love this. Our workforce put out 5 points. This is what we want you to think about. They grabbed every manager and gave them training that included as all good training does, it included both textual stuff, like here are the points we want you to learn, and metatextual stuff, like here's where the mute is on Zoom. Here is where the video on and off. Here's how you use the chat. Have you ever done a breakout room? Here's how you do a graffiti board. So we ensured every manager at LMI, by doing that training, understood that this is their job. This is your job to create this culture. What we mean by that, so ours were set your expectations, communicate often, more often than that, more often than that. So good on Rear Admiral Sharp for his town hall part 64. Use technology, and the technology that works is the technology that works. So if you all have the same Word document open in the share drive and you're all typing into that, that's technology, good on you. Be flexible. If someone has to be camera off, if someone has to be on silent, if someone has to be just typing in Teams and can't join the video meeting, be flexible, and then offer support. And for managers, that includes being vulnerable, like letting people see that it's not easy for you either. Especially, I think Alan really nailed that part where engagement, everyone was really excited when it was new and exciting, and then it kept happening and we kept being remote and it was less new and less exciting, and we all kind of hit the doldrums there in the winter. And I feel like there was another doldrums maybe last month or so when we're like, yeah, we're still doing this. So being explicit, being deliberate, making sure everyone has the tools and backup and support they need, whether that's technical skills, policies, words, the supply that they need, then that's really the key there, is that deliberate and explicit attention to culture and engagement.
Oh, I love the answer. Thank you so much, Mel. Surin, how have you seen the cultural shift in your organization and your move to more remote during this time?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we full-heartedly embrace the change, right? The first step for us was creating the flexibility that fosters an environment where our employees feel empowered to communicate what they want and the need, really professionally and personally, like to include developing flexible schedules, modified hours, hybrid schedules, not being okay with not joining a video call, right? Being only on audio, right? Like that's okay, right? Everyone's kind of got to find that right balance. And frankly, right, like at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest things that we've taken away is if we don't adapt our attitudes to this, right? Our staff, like especially the highly technical ones that are highly in demand with high clearances, they have options. They can go anywhere. So if we don't give them what they want, they'll go somewhere where they can get it.
Yep.
Right. I mean, at its core, that's kind of what it comes down to.
That's very true. That's very true. I think COVID has opened up a new future in how intelligence community and national security is looking at staffing and growing and answering mission needs in interesting ways. And so with those cultural changes and the rapid move to remote, there are obviously security concerns. There's risks associated with exposing yourself onto the public internet. So Wanda, can you please give us some insight on some of the challenges you had to face with balancing the need for remote, but also the need for security?
Yes, and some of the things were already mentioned. Part of it is ensuring that our infrastructure is sound, from the endpoints to the end devices, understanding who's on our network and what they are accessing. So, it allowed us to pay more attention. I think Mel mentioned it, pay more attention to what's going on, the behaviors, and ensuring that our team understands when there is an anomaly in the behavior. And certainly want to give kudos to Mel's comments about, how the leaders and the managers were trained. Well, when you talk about it from a network perspective, have our network ninjas understand when there's something different about what's going on the network. So from a security perspective, that's what we look for. But, from a people perspective, I certainly concur that it starts with the leadership, understanding where folks are in this cultural shift to telework, having more empathy, having, being able to listen more and not react to negativity and things like that, because the change impacted everything we do from our work life to our home life, and understanding that our airmen have responsibilities to the mission as well as to their families, with children in school and understanding, perhaps they can't have their camera on and things like that. But, from a people, technology, standpoint, as well as, the security piece. So, I definitely give kudos to the network team that continues to make sure that we are secure, that we have access, and that the mission goes on.
No, that's true.
Can I add to that?
Go ahead, Mel, please.
I really think making sure the infrastructure is still sound as a focus really, as Wanda put it, it highlighted for me that there was a huge amount of work for those who work in security and in technology at the beginning of this pandemic. And there's another big glut of work coming as we roll back in, because a lot of us MacGyvered a solution together.
Mm-hmm.
We figured something out. It's not pretty, but it worked. And now we need to go back and see what of that MacGyvered solution is good and we should keep, and what we should build more formally out of actual pieces and not a paperclip and some gum, and what we should be like, well, that was fine for 2020, but really we need to do a better version of this going forward. So my hat is off to all of you who work in implementing these ideas, because that was a lot of work, and I know that there's another big review that's underway that's coming right now.
No, that's very true. And I think you, Mel and Wanda, both mentioned this now return to some level of normalcy. How are your organizations feeling going forward? Is there going to be a tendency to go back to the way it was? And just like, well, it worked for 20, 30 years. Why? And just like we had a blip for a year. Are you finding that you need to push your organization internally to keep the momentum moving towards remote, or you're just, it's here to stay and no going back at this point? Soren?
Yeah, I mean, given the diversity of work and the client missions we support and our workforce's needs, right? The models we have to be adaptable and resilient. So for us, a hybrid model is more a guiding principle of individual and team flexibility, really backed by tools and trainings to help leaders make informed decisions. We're operating with the same posture we've been in, for some time now, right? Relying on telework and working on site as required by client needs and the mission. But going forward, we're expecting to pilot more hybrid workplace models, right? To integrate more remote delivery with some in-person for effective and efficient options, right? But part of that, right, comes with that partnership with the clients and contracts to make the changes needed to support elements of an unclassified mission set with the classified one, and how you kind of use secure methods to smash those two worlds together.
Yeah. Alan, with your organization and its pedigree, are you finding similar challenges trying to keep the momentum going now that some normalcy is coming?
No, from NJA's point of view, I mean, we are really entrenched in telework. I won't speak for the director at this point, but I certainly don't see us going back at all by any means, of any stretch of the imagination. So our challenges going forward now will be, as Mel said, we didn't take any shortcuts. We did, and to let Wanda know, we were insured. We worked in the FOU environment and with the FedRAMP and doing all the certifications and making sure that's all tight. So I think the biggest challenge of continuing with telework will be that on the networks and then on the CISOs, because there's so much more work there to do to get it right. I think we're right out on the leading edge, but as it becomes an everyday deal and our adversaries get better at it, we'll have to figure out how to harden up these unclassified networks.
One thing I'm hearing from both Wanda and Alan is the shift from saying no, just a default, no, we can't do that, too hard, too big, too much, to mitigating the risks involved. To we have to, so we're going to figure out how to mitigate the risks involved. And I'm wondering how that attitude going forward will impact all of the different things, not even just telework, but all of the different aspects of working in a national security environment. As a very old, but technically a millennial, I cannot tell you the number of conversations I've had in SCIFs with people talking about, these kids and their cell phones. They can't, they won't take national security jobs because they want to have their cell phones with them, and then they're going to take a selfie in the SCIF. And so I'm wondering how this proving to ourselves this proof of concept of the shift to telework, and then continuing to embrace it from as big a name as NGA and the Air Force, continuing to move forward in a telework environment will affect those attitudes too of, well, if this is possible, what else is possible?
Absolutely.
So this is one that,
go ahead, Wanda.
That's a tough one. And meeting our talented folks where they are will require us to think a little differently. Of course, we are embracing telework fully. We'll do a hybrid. But what I would draw to those individuals who we want to recruit to come in to be an airman is, let the mission outweigh, things like that. And have them understand the impact of everything they do, from, posting those, trying to post those selfies to, hey, this is a cool mission. We are, involved in national security for the nation, and let that be enough to draw you to become a team member of the department.
No, that's excellent. I have a number of other great questions, but our questions is filling up from our audience as well. So I think this would be a good time to jump into some questions which are brought to you by LMI. So thank you, LMI, for sponsoring this piece of the talk. So let me see. There's quite a few. Alan, you're a very popular man in the questions section here. Let's start with you, Alan, on was it difficult to handle the uptick of demand from the remote sense of only 10% of your workforce at the beginning to surging to the percentage you are today? How difficult was it for your teams to scale, given the challenges, the lack of hardware, and all the things that had to run into to do that?
Thank you, and great question. So right when we kind of all exited, somewhere around 16, 17 March, in the first week of March, in April, we started, from a voice perspective, seeing a lot more inbound and outbound calls going that just absolutely crushed our network. So that was one of the very first things that we had to do, is we had to get with our Verizon provider and also with DISA to increase all of those trunks in a very expeditious fashion. Became very costly. We also had to increase our data delivery, as we now have 90% of the workforce trying to get into our NIPRN, or unclassified network, through Citrix. And so that was another large expense on getting the network guys to get all that infrastructure and those net scalers put in there. And I absolutely applaud them, because I think probably the third week of April, we were in a very down posture and had to let everybody connected. So there was a lot of people pulling a lot of hours, and it kind of came together. But going back from the CISO point of view, we never sacrificed our security or our FOUO posture, and made sure that all that training was in. Anyway, great question. Thanks.
Surin, this one, many IC agencies are struggling to quickly identify and deploy capabilities for telework. What lessons can you take away from the past year that can help strengthen the remote capabilities for these IC agencies?
Yeah, for us, it was, working with our staff that support those clients and having those conversations, both kind of at the low level, at the, kind of office level, but then also at the senior most level of the agency as well, right? Top down and bottoms up approach that really drives getting these changes made to figure out which portions of work can be done. I think everyone's heart is in the right place, right? But sometimes it's, how do we put the processes in place and use the right levers when we need? And I think that's the challenge we kind of would, it was 1000% a collaborative effort between us and our clients, right? And you know, contracts is a part of that, right? And getting everyone to the table at the same time is sometimes the hardest part of it, but you know.
Excellent, excellent. That's an interesting point you bring up, contracts and just them moving at the speed of the pandemic and technology. How have you, and this is open to anyone in the panel, how have you seen your agencies or your organizations being either enabled and supported by changes in contracts, or conversations you've had to help enable that customer to say, oh, you're right, we should try this, or we should do this more? Anyone, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. I mean, you know, we do a lot of work, you know, for federal clients doing enterprise software development, right? And a lot of those places, you know, we have DevSecOps approaches already built in to do low to high development, but it was in the building, right? So how do we scale that out to use resources outside, like commercial AWS resources that can be available to kind of instantiate those development environments using the same DevSecOps approaches, hardening, following the same processes for accreditation that we need, and then, you know, work through the right security postures inside the building to do those secure deployments. Right? That's just kind of one example of how, you know, we've kind of made the pivot to kind of provide, you know, remote opportunities for technical talent doing, you know, software development at scale.
That's interesting. I thought the two things that came to my head asking about how did contracts help or hurt supporting during this. One is that it changed a lot of things that we've thought of as workplace benefits or as nice to haves or as cultural issues to mission issues. Telework went from a work-life benefit, a flexibility benefit, to a mission issue. We needed it to work to continue to accomplish the mission. And that just changes all kinds of things, where you can put that work, what kind of labor categories you can put toward it, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure Saran would agree with me from his company. You keep saying partnership, and you're absolutely right. That's how we feel about it at LMI too. So for us, some of it was, this is what we're contracted to do. This is the statement of work. And let me put that down for a minute. It's a global pandemic, Mike from the State Department. What do you need from me right now? What do you need from your team? Do you need us to continue doing this work as agreed on that schedule? Do you need us to lay off you for a minute? Because if we're there and we're like, we were going to put out a survey, can we come back and put out a survey? And they're like, listen, we're trying to make sure everyone's paid and healthy. Come back with your survey later. So part of that partnership was us as contractors saying, hey, statement of work aside, what do you need? What can we do to help?
And I would like to add, Mel, that's a great point. And, from the federal perspective, we certainly appreciate it when our industry partners had the same thought patterns as we did. What were the critical tasks that we needed to ensure had to be accomplished? How did we all pivot, not just, the airmen, the military and civilian, but we needed our partners to pivot at the same time or quicker than we did. And so, we did lean on, those partners all the time during the process of trying to get this telework capability in place. And it worked well. It demonstrated that, pushing everything aside, that we were true partners when called upon. So certainly appreciate that comment.
No, that's very good, very good. There's so many good questions here. I'm torn. So let's pivot a little bit, and I'll take two questions and combine them. So one part I think sits in Mel's territory, and then I think the other piece is in Wanda and Alan. So if you guys had to give a brand new agency guidance on what to do for remote work to be successful, what would be your pro tips that would be, hey, I wish I knew this before I started, and going forward, both from a people perspective and just from a enabling mission perspective?
So I'll start. What guidance would I give? First of all, know your people, know their capabilities. So you would definitely have to. You may have folks who are apprehensive about telework because of the technology and the learning curve that may be needed. So you need to know that. Know your policies. You know what policies may be obstacles, and work through that. And then know who your partners are from a technology standpoint. You know, as we moved into the telework environment, it took a complete team to do that. Our network folks were critical because we needed them to execute, and we tried to make sure that the policy supported that move quickly. You know, working with our acquisition teams to get that capability into the inventory, tested and evaluated for security, and then implemented. So you kind of have to work in various approaches, but at the end of the day, you got to have someone who can lead the entire implementation while also pulling in the folks they need during those times.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Alan,
I think that the very first thing for a brand new company that wants to look at telework is just kind of define what is your end goal to your workforce at home. Is it audio? Is it video? How much collaboration do you want to do? And then once you find what the need is, then you have to shape it from the complexity of businesses that are out there that can provide certain capabilities to your requirements. But I would also caution against, I would use a closed architecture over an open architecture because it gives you far more flexibility, troubleshooting, and it gives a single platform to that workforce at home, so we're not going through 3 and 4 different types of platforms to learn or to use. So the biggest thing is how do you want to communicate at home, and how many tools do you want at home?
Yeah.
The only thing I would add to that is national security is not now, nor has it ever been, a beltway issue. So look outside the beltway. Let's pretend location doesn't exist or doesn't matter. So if talking to a company that doesn't exist yet, don't build yourself on the legacy of everyone else. Be where your people are. Sorry, Sharon.
And just another part, right? Removing barriers to access to support the telework, right? Like, it's not going to be equitable for everyone. Everyone's not going to have the same kind of accesses and tools, right? Don't make assumptions they do, right? And make sure you're kind of thinking about that as you stand up that organization and those processes.
No, those are very good points. As we grow and as you all have iterated, telework is here. Telework has become mission. Telework is not a flexible feature on some schedule for some people. It is an enabler to enhance mission, expand workforce, improve people's lives. So across the board, of all the sadness that's come through the pandemic, I think the one shining light is we now have been forced to innovate and see that this is more than just a nice to have. And so whoever's attending and listening to this, please make sure your organizations know that going forward, it's the expectation for the future workforce and the current workforce that we want to be better, and flexibility is part of that, and remote gives you that. I got a couple more questions, but I do want to take a pause here. Is there anything the panelists would like to talk about that we haven't asked questions about, that there's a topic that you're like, ooh, I really want a moment to talk about that. So I want to give you that to the team and see and share something that we may not have thought of.
Yeah, I'd like to add one I've been chomping at the bit to do. So we have a large deaf, hard of hearing community at NGA. Being large, I mean by about 40 employees. I think it's the most in the IC. So our sign language interpreters came up with a program to do everything remotely from a single operation center. Then they came over to my office and they said, now can you build it? And I said, gee, thanks. But anyway, it has been just an absolute huge success. In fact, so much as it's now become an enduring part of the facility. So it's a way, not only on the high side, if a deaf employee is, that they can, instead of the interpreter coming to their desk, they can call the operations center, be connected to any meeting, and vice versa for also folks at home. So even our community was not left behind, but actually put out in the forefront. So that was one of our shining lights of this telework.
And that's actually an additional effect of this move, is that now we're able to include more than less and enable more, and because it's part of the transition anyway, so we've included it. So hats off to NGA for making that a priority, and all our organizations that enable that for all their people. Anyone else would like to add any additional thought?
Yeah, I mean, Gabe, while COVID still is a threat, right? Unfortunately, there's going to be future threats in the future, right? There are unknowns that could happen that could have this kind of impact, right? But if we don't take the lessons we've learned through this pandemic, right, and apply them to transform the mission now, right, we're just going to be repeating history like March again last year, right, when the time comes, right? So it's kind of being prepared and starting to put these lessons learned into place.
No, that's good.
I love that, and adding to that, learning the lessons and letting not leaving anyone behind, bringing everyone with you. I want to go back to Wanda said it, that we're not going back. The world of January 2020 is gone. It is gone, and we're going to something, and it's not going to be mid-pandemic anymore, but it's not 2020, it's not early 2020 anymore. So what is it? We can build that. If everything fell apart, that means everything is possible.
I love that. Absolutely love that. So here's a question on the cultural front. So we're so used to having get-togethers and happy hours and cultural social building with our employees and our clients in a physical space. How have your organizations been able to expand that to remote, from maybe introducing more online games like we've done, remote escape room where there's a guy with a camera running around being your hands and eyes, to bringing whatever's unique to your workforce and infusing that into them remotely? How have you guys done that?
Well, at LMI, I have two things I want to highlight. One is we've seen a huge uptick in the participation in things like affinity groups or after hours, happy hours, or events when we went all virtual, from people who don't sit at headquarters. And it's every contracting company, and Seren, you can back me up on this, every contracting company has the two world effect of headquarters people and people who work at client site. And that's sometimes doubled or tripled for people who work in a SCIF. It's like you never see them. They work for LMI, but do you ever see them ever? But all of a sudden, with all of us working from home, you don't know who lives in Tampa and who lives in San Antonio and who is usually always at NGA, or, we all look the same. And so we're actually moving forward, we're going to keep a lot of our events virtual, so that people who are in different areas can still attend, can still be part of that, to increase that spirit of camaraderie and connectedness. And LMI, to kind of keep spirits up, they turn to a lot of, we keep getting little boxes in the mail. It's nice. They send a box of snacks, or I got a set of earbuds or something to you just get a little surprise in the mail, and sometimes it's a surprise, sometimes you get to pick it, and it's explicit. This is in the next 2 weeks, this is coming, don't turn away the postman. This is coming, and it's part of us to let you know we're still thinking of you. So I thought that was a nice way our company reached out and connected us.
Oh, wow, Mel, that is awesome. No, I didn't get anything in the mail.
I should have sent you my coffee sampler.
But doing things like, setting up a water cooler, where folks can, kind of congregate virtually to check in on each other, or just, have a quick hello. Round tables, games, theme meetings where either you dress the part or you have the background that matches, a movie setting that, we picked out. So just, getting folks involved, from a fun perspective, was also part of something we want to do, because, we do have folks who don't have, anyone at home with them, and just, try to keep it light at times, but understand when we need to surge and do the mission. So, keeping a balance and just over communicating is very important during this time.
Yep. Communicate,
over communicate. And I think, even beyond like the social aspects, right? It's that interpersonal connection that at least, for me personally, that I've been heavily focused on over the past year, right? I mean, I know I purposely will ask, if somebody wants to meet, right? Like, let's have a WebEx instead of just a phone call, right? Like, to just like see that face-to-face interaction, right? Mm-hmm. So you can kind of get that engagement, but then, also kind of just having like office hours, right? Where I'll have a WebEx room open, right? And it would be the equivalent of somebody kind of walking into my office, right? Just to talk. Those are just things that I've put into place, like within to help our teams kind of, have better, access to leaders, right? And I know like a lot of my colleagues have done the same.
No, that's awesome. Alan, you say anything?
Yeah, so from a large corporate, I didn't get anything in the mail either. So I'll talk to the Admiral. But from a very large corporate deal is that we relied on our WebEx and our vBrick distribution to get out to the larger part of the workforce. And we didn't forget about all the different things that we did during the year, such as, award ceremonies, retirements, the Hispanic Heritage Month, the Pacific American Heritage Month, the Pride Month, the Army birthday, Navy birthday, all of them. So we continued to do those from our little TV studio, and they were very heavily attended, on average of about 4,000 to 5,000 in the workforce for each event. So we were very, very proud that we were able to kind of keep them connected on those fronts. But now as people are coming back in, we're starting to see the MWR invites for a happy hour here and there or a cookout. So we're slowly starting to get back to normal for those that are inside the house, and we're going to keep it as normal as we can for those people that are staying at home.
No, that's so excellent, and we're nearing the end of our time here, and I want to thank the entire team for all the great points and insights. With the last few minutes before I hand this over to John, what's one last takeaway you would love our audience to just take with them if they have only paid attention to the last few minutes of this conversation? I'll start with you, Mel.
We had a discussion about May is Mental Health Month, and we've been continuing our mental health discussions into June at LMI, and we had a discussion about the impacts of COVID on mental health. And the takeaway from that was giving grace to people, including to yourself. And remembering that you are a person who also requires a little bit of give sometimes. So, and that's really something I hope we can take forward, that we're doing our best here as this was a big leap forward on remote work in national security, and our technological community made it happen. And nothing is perfect, and we're adjusting as we go forward. We're keeping it as good as we can. We're keeping it part of the group, and give grace to those people who are doing their best work to keep us all connected.
So true. Wanda?
Yeah, I certainly agree with what Mel said, and the people piece is always in the front of my mind, and just let folks know we can do it. The change is good. There will be challenges, and we'll continue to mature as we continue in this space of telework and hybrid to get the mission accomplished.
Well said. Soren?
Yeah, I mean, I think continuing the dialogue and continuing to push forward with, industry, the contracts, and the clients really to continue to push, right? How do we look at transforming these approaches for the mission, right? Like continuing that dialogue and not letting it tail off is going to be so critical, especially over these next several months. And that really has to be kind of the burning platform, right? As we come back into the offices, right? We can't just get mired back down into the way we were, right? And let that pull us back down. Like we have to purposefully keep it in the forefront of our minds.
And then Alan, please send us off before I pass this over to John.
All right, thanks. So I think the one piece of advice I would give, especially for the folks in the IC, is don't look in the rearview mirror. we've already done a tremendous amount of work there. I think we need to start looking at that horizon, what that looks like when we come out of the pandemic. And then potentially if we ever had to go back to it. Rely on your industry partners. They do a tremendous job for us at NGA, and I got a terrific workforce.
You guys are, I wish I could spend another hour with you all, but we can't, and I will gladly move over to John to send us off and let us know about future events.
Thank you so much,
thanks
Gabe.
to everyone.
Thank you.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well, thank you so much, Gabe, and thank you, panelists. This has been a terrific discussion. Thank you for providing, such candid assessments of all these issues. I'd also like to note that there's a paper from LMI on the federal hybrid workforce that's available for download, and you can find it on the handouts section of the webinar tool if you'd like some more perspectives on this topic. And to everybody who joined us this afternoon, thank you for watching. We are glad you took time to join us. And of course, thank you to our sponsors, Booz Allen Hamilton, LMI, and SAIC. And finally, we hope you join us at an upcoming INSA event. On July the 7th, we will be hosting Rear Admiral Mike Studeman, the Director for Intelligence at U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. And the next week, on July 12th through the 16th, we hold our new IC Empowering Women and Engaging Men virtual symposium. And finally, registration is open for the William Oliver Baker Award Dinner taking place on Saturday, September 25th at the Omni Showroom in Washington, D.C. We expect nearly 700 IC and national security leaders to be on hand as we celebrate former PDD&I, the Honorable Sue Gordon. It's really going to be a memorable evening. You can find the full lineup of our virtual events on insaonline.org. And when the webinar ends, you'll see a short survey pop up on your screen. Please take a minute to answer the survey questions as we value your feedback. And from my remote work home studio, this concludes today's program. Stay safe and healthy and have a great afternoon.